morning all. Thank you very much. Let's get started. Let's get started and start talking about Canada and Mexico, online business development tools that are there to help us grow our business in those countries. We have a very full agenda, lots of takeaways, lots of things for you to dwell on, and hopefully an enjoyable webinar as well. Just while the last of you are logging on, and I can see it ticking along, I'm going to give quick introductions. As you see, we have a lot of panel here, which is fantastic. So just starting on the right side, so my name is Susanna. I'm Chief Content Officer for a company called IBT Online. Then I have Tracy Ford, a commercial specialist based in Ottawa, at the US Embassy in Ottawa, and works for the US Commercial Service. And she'll be talking about Canada and the best practices for e-commerce in Canada, how to grow your business there, and is a tremendous source of resource for you all in the Canadian market. So do reach out. Her email's on that slide. Center 40, we have Jonathan. Jonathan is the general manager of Advanced Super Abrasives, a North Carolina-based company, and he's here to share some of his experience as an exporter into those two markets. And I will let him introduce Advanced Super Abrasives and his role in that as well. We have Adriana. Adriana is the commercial specialist and specialized really for ICT, based in Mexico City at the US Embassy there, and has lots of knowledge and in-depth experience on the ICT market, on e-commerce, on helping America's exporters grow their sales in Mexico. And then we have Manuel Valasquez, also based on the US Commercial Services, but he's based in Monterrey. And Manny has a very specific, sort of very practical role, and he's going to give a little shout out as well to some of the processes that he can help with for American exporters for that. So a quick overview also, you know who US Commercial Services are. Just to say who we are as a company, IBT Online is a US company with offices. We have a couple of different offices, and we are 100% focused on providing online business development tools. That's websites and online marketing for small and mid-cap American exporters. So that's our wheelhouse. That's our specialty. That's what we're known for. And we've also developed a series of programs called the Online Global Programs, which are available and eligible for grant step funds across many of the US states. Today, as I said, because I'm really rushing through this, we've got a lot to talk about. So just going to give a little tiny introduction of what we're talking about, and then sort of put a sort of a frame around some of the pictures that we're going through. Then I'm going to hand over to Jonathan to talk us through how he sort of went through the process, particularly for Canada and Mexico, and what the tools he used for expanding his exports. Then Tracy's going to talk to us a bit about US Commercial Services and specifically about Canada. Adriana is going to talk about Mexico and the e-commerce environment and how you can really leverage that e-commerce environment to grow your sales. And Manny's going to talk specifically, as I said, about some of the processes and the customs processes. So that's a little breakout there as well, as very particular to Mexico. And I'm going to come back with just a few examples and case studies of best practice online tools that American exporters have used with us. Then we've saved some time at the end for Q&A. So do feel free to pop any questions into the chat box. We'd love to hear from you on that. So getting right into it, getting started here. I'm just going to share some very, very big picture numbers with you here. So this is obviously not Canada and Mexico, this is the world. 8 billion people, of which 5.5 are on iPhones and 5 are using the internet. And nearly 5 are using social media. So 8 billion people, of which 5 billion are using the internet, and nearly 5 billion are using social media. And if you look at the top, you can see how many hours a day, the average daily time spent online is nearly 7 hours, on social media 2.5 hours. So for small mid-cap companies, this is great news for you. This means you know where your prospective clients are. they're online. You know how to engage with them and reach them and contact them via social media. So this is what we really want to take out with you. Use those online tools to grow your business. Another sort of quick big picture side is just sort of generally on e-commerce. We talked about 5 billion people using the internet. 4 billion of them are active, regular e-commerce users. Okay, now these numbers here are for B2C. B2B numbers are harder to get a hold of, but B2B is much larger than B2C. I just wanted to share another thing which is sort of which way is the tide going? I think which is the direction of travel here. What we see continuously again and again is that the future of sales is very much online and driven by this omni-channel digital first wave that we're coming with. More and more customer centric, more and more omni-channel that all companies need to be right now. Whether you're B2C, B2B, B2G, whatever it is, you need to make sure that your online tools are working hard for you. And so I guess the first takeaway from our point of view from this brief introduction is just to say that the world is online. Remember those numbers, 5 billion, nearly 7 hours a day, of which 2.5 on social media. So make sure your online assets, your websites, your online marketing are working hard for you, not just in your domestic market, but exporting as well. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Jonathan. And Jonathan, tell us a little bit about Advanced Super Abrasives and your company.
Thank you, Susanna. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. I hope everybody gets a lot out of this. I'm just here to share with you who's Advanced Super Abrasives and what's our story. So you're probably saying, Advanced Super Abrasives, what is that? Well, we make grinding wheels, and people say, okay, well, what's a grinding wheel? We make wheels that make the tools that make things. So every industry you can imagine, from medical devices to automotive, aerospace, ag industry, oil and gas, renewable industry. So, green energy, all that other things that you could imagine that's high precision all have to be ground. And we're not much different than all the rest of you exporters. We started out as an accidental exporter. Somebody from Canada and somebody from Mexico said, hey, we'd like your product. How do we get it? And then we go, oh, I don't know. And then we, like most people go, this shipping to Mexico is like shipping to South Carolina from North Carolina. No, it's not. Shipping into Canada is like shipping to Vermont. No, it's not. There are a little bit different things that you have to do. So, like most exporters, we trudged along and we started getting better and better and doing exporting in Canada and Mexico. And, we enjoyed NAFTA. And then after NAFTA, we started saying, hey, we really need to be serious about our export strategy. And we went from exporting to 2 markets to 28 markets around the world. But then COVID hit. And in our industry, like a lot of people's industry, we're a person-to-person industry, brick and mortar, in the manufacturing facility, going to trade shows, doing all the things that we love to do. And with COVID, we couldn't do any of that. So then what do? We sat there and we said, we got to figure out a different strategy. And for years, we've tinkered with our website, but really didn't think about what would creating a website for Canada and Mexico do for our business. And what would a social media strategy be for those markets? So here you can see our website, which we love our website that we had created during COVID. But then we had websites created for Mexico and Canada because they were our 2 largest markets. And then we started putting a social media strategy behind it. So we focused on LinkedIn for Canada, and we focused on Facebook for Mexico. Mm-hmm. And what we found were just exponential results. So my distributors in both countries were saying they were going from cold calling companies to getting 10 requests for quote a week. That's a huge benefit for them. Plus, with everything being in local languages and everything else that comes with having a localized website, they could direct customers to the .mx website or the .ca website for Mexico and Canada, and they felt like we were invested in those countries. So we were no longer a US entity that was exporting from afar. we were now a part of those actual markets because we had taken the time to properly translate the website, to get a domain with a .mx, to get a domain with a .ca. And so our customers felt like, oh, now they're really invested in our country and in our culture and everything. And, you know, especially in the Latin American countries like Mexico, you know, I always tell people there's no sale until I get invited to the family dinner. Then once I get invited to a family dinner, I know I'm in, we're going to start doing business. Okay. And Canada is not much different. You know, they want that personal relationship too. So to see that website with the .ca was very important. But the other thing is that social media reach out, you know, knowing which channels to use, using those channels effectively. And those could be regional, those could be you're going to a trade show and you want to target certain areas. You know, what does that mean when you talk about just social media marketing? Is it just Google ads? Is it? No, it's a mixture of things. But you have to know your markets, and you have to know that most people in Canada use LinkedIn and most people in Mexico are using Facebook. And while you can have some crossover, don't expect to get a huge, you know, return on investment for LinkedIn ads in Mexico, but you will get a lot in Facebook or Google ads. Likewise, most people in Mexico are using their cell phones to look at things, so you want to make sure your videos and content are all, you know, cell phone ready. In Canada, it's the opposite. They're mostly using their desktops. So, you know, you want to be able to have that, you know, flexibility to have all these things and to have, you know, put all these things together to work for you. And you say, well, you know, you say that you're a brick and mortar, you're a walk-in, you work with the customer and everything. How did it affect your company? Well, I told you the request for quotes and everything else. I can tell you in Canada, when we went live with our website the first year, we had a 25 to 30% increase in our export revenue to Canada. Okay, that has since gone up another 15 to 20% every year since we went live with the website and social media content. In Mexico, the first year we went live, we did more in export sales in 1 year than the previous 15 years combined. Okay, to the point where we actually had to open a sales office in Monterrey, Mexico, which is where Manny is. So if we have a local office to Manny that our salesperson can just go down the road and say, hey, Manny, I'm here with ASI and, you know, we're selling grinding wheels in all these industries here locally. But what does that do? You're saying, okay, well, Advanced Super Abrasives has all the success. We're in rural Western North Carolina in the mountains, a company of 40 people. So you talk about fighting way outside of your league. That's what we're doing, okay? And having these international websites and the social media push allow us to do that. It allows us to make these contacts. It allows us to start the conversation, and then our team takes it home, whether it's our salespeople or our distributors internationally, whether it's our team here locally. They take it across the finish line. They get across the goal line for that sale. But this reach out with the website is imperative. You want people to know that you're there and you're serious about doing business in their market. Having the social media content is also imperative. Most people want to learn about your products and what they do and what are the benefits of it. So having little videos, you know, 10, 15-second videos about your products or your culture or whatever. You know, the fact that we're a family business, it rings true in a lot of countries, but especially in Latin American countries, they want to work with somebody who's a family business. They may not want to work with a big corporation. They like that personal contact. So it's important to really highlight what your business does well and your culture and who you are. And we were able to do that with these websites. Now, I will tell you this. Please, 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 please hear this if you didn't hear anything else I said. Do not do this on your own with Google Translator or anything like that. Please get with a professional website building company, whether it's IBT Online, which we use IBT Online to build all of our websites, and I highly suggest you work with somebody like IBT Online or IBT Online that's on this webinar. But you need a professional to help you with this, and I'll tell you why. Google Translator is going to translate things all incorrectly, and grinding wheels is going to be grinding something else in the Google world. It's not going to actually be grinding wheels. The culture of your company will not properly be shown. The other thing is what IBT brings, especially on the social media marketing content, is they will help you to craft a social media plan for your target market. They have experts on that. So, you know, in Mexico, we're going to be working specifically on this target. In Canada, it's going to be a totally different market and specific targeting event. And so you need a good partner. And that's why I said not a company to work with, but a partner. And we partner with IBT for many years. We've had many successes with Canada and Mexico, where we're looking at other target areas of, maybe South Korea, maybe the UK, and all these other markets that we would like to do localized websites. One thing I will leave you with before I turn it back over to Susanna is don't be surprised if you have a website based in Canada or a website based in Mexico, that when you go through your monthly reports and you see who's visiting your website, that when you see Canada, you're seeing India, you're seeing Australia, you're seeing the UK visiting your Canadian website. Don't be surprised with Mexico that you're seeing other Latin American countries that could be Central or South American looking. So a lot of times when I would look at our report for Mexico, I would see countries like Colombia, and other countries in Latin America. So don't be surprised when you see that. These international websites have a greater reach than just these two markets. But because of USMCA, because of the closeness of all three countries and how we work economically very well together, I always suggest people, Canada and Mexico are the two countries that I would always start with first, and then you can expound upon that. But with our international websites, we really have seen exponential growth in our export to both of these markets. And again, like I said, for a company of 40 people, we're fighting way outside of our weight class. And these websites and the social media marketing is a really great push in doing that. And some of these areas, as Manny, Adriana, and Tracy will tell you, they're not easy to get into in Canada and Mexico. But if people find you and they get interested in your products, that's a big plus for you going in. And the first impression is always the impression they're going to remember. So that's why you need to have somebody professionally helping you do this. And don't do this on your own, because if it looks like that you cheapskated on it, it was poorly produced and everything else, they're going to assume your products are the same way. But if it's professionally produced and people see professional content, they will expect your products to actually reflect that as well. So I will be here for the Q&A. If you have any questions, I'm sure Susanna will tell you to put questions in the chat box. But I will be here for the Q&A, and I look forward to hearing what Manny, Adriana, Tracy have to say. Thank you.
Jonathan, thank you so much. And there's questions already coming in. So thank you very much. Much appreciated. That was, I think, a very telling and succinct sort of testimony of a very successful, American exporter. And that. Before I pass on to Tracy, I just wanted to sort of highlight one aspect, and it's something that Jonathan also brought up, which is, connecting with your prospective buyer. You got to figure out what that prospective buyer is like. And I think that you'll find that Tracy and Adriana have that as their core as well, in terms of how they're looking at both Canada and Mexico. And when you're looking to go into those international markets, one of the key things you need to figure out is who exactly is your buyer persona in those markets, and what is their journey. So I put some questions there on the left that you might want to think about. And the changes you make can be quite subtle. They can be quite they can be visual as well as just the content. So it's not just about changing words. It's maybe trying to really connect with a real person there. And this is a silly example, but the picture here you have is L'Oreal USA. So this is the USA L'Oreal, French hair company, hair products company. But if we look at, for example, L'Oreal in Mexico, it's a little bit different. It's subtly different. It's more collegiate. It's also urban. It's very in the top of a building. It's very, very, looks like Mexico City. It's smoggy out there. but there's a man in there. It's less formal, I think, too. And it's very collegiate. They're all gathered around this one computer. It's very group thing to death. And I think that's interesting. An interesting thing that L'Oreal. If I look at Canada, again, it's different. It's, obviously it's hair products, but it's just a different feel to it. This very, mosaic country that Canada is. So I just want to leave you with some thoughts about that, about the importance of identifying your buyer persona and the journey that they have. And if you figure that out, then you can figure out how best to have your website and your online marketing tailored towards that for engagement and real conclusion, real that building that trust that you need to have a sale. So now I'm going to pass over to Tracy, please, to talk about U.S. commercial services.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Susanna, and congratulations, Jonathan, on such great success outside of the United States. I know that that's how big a challenge that is because I've been working in that area for the last 22 years. So I'm just going to start off the presentation today by telling you a little bit about who the commercial service is so that you know Adriana, Manny, and myself, who we are and what we do every day. The U.S. Commercial Service, we're the overseas trade promotion arm of the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. We have a global network of trade professionals located in 100 U.S. cities and in embassies and consulates in over 80 countries worldwide. And the purpose of our organization is to provide support to U.S. companies so that they can do business effectively and efficiently in foreign markets. Next slide, please, Susanna. I don't see the, oh, there we go. Okay, so our mission is fourfold, basically. It starts with export promotion activities. So under this pillar, we perform services that help U.S. companies do business in foreign markets. That's going to include counseling on how to do business in the foreign country, providing market intelligence, and delivering services such as business matchmaking so that you can connect with companies, distributors, resellers, and end users in the foreign market. The second pillar is commercial diplomacy. So this is assistance that provides dedicated support to tackle both challenges and opportunities in foreign markets. So commercial diplomacy works to ensure open and effective engagement with foreign government officials on behalf of U.S. companies, industries, and broader national economic security interests. So if I give you an example of that, a number of years ago, the Canadian government made a decision that companies in Canada could only sell baby food in 2-size jars. Now, that disqualified a great number of U.S. baby food producers from selling in Canada because their jars didn't meet the new Canadian requirements. So we worked with the Canadian government on that decision, explained the industry repercussions for us, and in essence, the Canadian government modified the decision so that U.S. companies were able to sell their products here. So commercial diplomacy, it can be specific issues that are, you know, to each individual company, or it can be an issue that affects an industry as a whole. The third pillar is advocacy. So any U.S. companies that are bidding on foreign government procurements, they can apply to our official advocacy program, and if they are approved, they work with our advocacy office to develop a strategy that can help improve the company's chances of winning the bid. And then the last thing is foreign investment into the United States. So that doesn't probably really apply to any of the U.S. companies on the call here today, but just for information's sake, our offices around the globe work to find foreign companies that are interested in investing in the United States and help them through that process so that we bring jobs and revenues back to the United States. Next slide. So what does this mean to you? I hope you're all sitting there thinking, this sounds just great, but where do I start? So you need to connect with the U.S. commercial service person, my counterpart in your local U.S. Export Assistance Center. That person will work with you to help you develop a strategy, choose a country, and if necessary, connect you to the correct person in our overseas office who will help you in the market. So that Manny, Adriana, and myself are in the overseas markets. To do this, you just need to visit our website at www.trade.gov. You scroll down to the bottom of the page and choose Contact Us, and then you scroll down to the US office locations and just pick the closest office to your headquarters. And if for whatever reason you can't find your local contact, my information is all over this presentation and I'm happy to refer you back. So I'm going to move on to specifically talking about Canada now. If we can go to the first slide, Susanna, please. And next. So why should a US exporter think about entering Canada? Canada and the United States have the largest trade relationship in the world. We have $2.5 billion worth of goods that goes back and forth across the border every single day. That amounts to a lot over the course of a year. So it's not surprising to hear that Canada is often the first place many US companies look when considering exporting. And it's for a very good reason. For the most part, Canada has a shared language, culture and lifestyle similarities to Americans, and Canada has a stable economy with very similar laws to the United States. The USMCA trade agreement also provides many advantages to doing business here. Canada is also an affluent, high-tech society with a market-oriented economy and high living standards. In 2022, Canada ranked the 9th largest economy in the world by the World Bank and the 23rd among 190 economies in the ease of doing business. E-commerce offers great potential for US companies wishing to sell here. Canada's business-to-consumer e-commerce market is said to resemble the US market in terms of feature and preferences. The biggest difference is that Canada's economy is a bit smaller. So it's basically due to the significantly lower population here. So we're only about 1/12 the size of the population of the United States. But that said, the market opportunities in Canada in e-commerce are not insignificant. So the pandemic is the primary reason for this growth, as it pulled e-commerce adoption in Canada ahead by about 5 to 10 years. So year over year, e-commerce sales have more than doubled with a 110.8% increase compared to May 2019. And when it comes to online shopping, almost every Canadian with an internet connection is participating, with 88% reporting making a purchase online in the last 12 months. And I just myself, just before we got on this call, I did my Nespresso order online, and I and I was ordering Christmas gifts. So it's estimated that in 2023, 11.5% of all retail sales in Canada are going to be made online. As for the biggest sellers, while small businesses in the retail sector have increased their e-commerce presence, the top online channels in Canada remain Amazon.ca, Walmart.ca, and Costco.ca. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about the trends in e-commerce in Canada. And the first trend that I want to touch on is the increase of mobile and social commerce. Thus, my Nespresso order that I just placed was mobile. Mobile commerce keeps growing in Canada, accounting for about 36% of all e-commerce sales. And perhaps not surprisingly, young consumers have shown a kind of a greater trend towards mobile purchases and are more responsive to mobile ads. So as that young new generation comes in, that mobile trend keeps growing. Recent data from Statista showed that market leader Facebook accounted for 65.5% of all social media visits in June 2022, followed by Twitter with 11%, and Instagram ranked third with 7.65% of the visits. Second trend we want to talk about is the growth in the buy now, pay later option. So that's a service that's offered by online retailers at the time of checkout, and it allows the purchaser the ability to break up the cost of a purchase into several smaller payments. This is quite a growing trend here. Next is the growth in cross-border shopping. So Canada's homegrown e-commerce market was slow to develop, and this created a strong cross-border shopping culture. The pandemic actually fueled that trend, and coupled with a demand for lower prices and a much better selection in the US market, it means that Canadians are used to purchasing from the US via e-commerce. Wholesale sales are increasing online as well. As Canadian retail comes to recognize e-commerce as a necessity, business-to-business suppliers are also beginning to explore online opportunities to better serve their customers' unique needs. So for the most part, Canadian companies have been pretty slow to respond to this trend, but as a result, there is a virtually untapped, expanding digital market in Canada that could prove a significant opportunity and competitive advantage for US distributors. And then the last thing I want to touch on in trends is the interest in interactive shopping using virtual reality. I personally love this one because I also cover the technology sector, so I think it's just really cool. But virtual reality refers to an immersive visual environment. So it can refer to like the 360-degree videos like you see when you go into a building, or a real estate, they show you the 360-degree video, the photos, or product demos. And I'm really starting to see a lot more of that on Canadian websites. Next slide, please, Susanna. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges to doing business in Canada. And you know, both Jonathan and Susanna already alluded to this, that you know your customer. So, you know, Canada and the US, we share a lot of similarities. We watch the same TV, we grew up with the same magazines, you know, but there's some really important differences. And if you're going to consider doing business in Canada, I just want to point out a few of these. So as I say, in a lot of ways, Canadians have their own unique culture and preferences, especially when you're working in places like the province of Quebec. So understanding the differences, that's going to be the utmost importance when you're doing business here. First, I want to just touch upon the fact that Canada is a bilingual country. Officially, at the federal level, we speak both French and English across the country. In addition, each of Canada's provinces and territories has adopted its own official language policy. So Quebec is the only province that acknowledges French as its sole official language. So you or your representatives are most likely going to be required to know some level of French to work in this province. New Brunswick, which is on the East Coast, is the only province that's bilingual. And the rest of the provinces are English. English is the main working language. And language is going to be really important when you start selling here, especially to the governments or to the province of Quebec. Language is also going to play a major role in your packaging and labeling requirements. So because that French bilingualism, or sorry, the bilingualism is at the federal level, any goods that are coming in to Canada must comply with the Canadian Consumer Packaging and Labeling Act. And that act requires that all labels be bilingual, meaning both French and English. And as you work in Quebec, the rules become actually even more specific. And this includes your product labeling, your package labeling, and product inserts, such as your manuals and warranties. Everything has to be in both French and English. Canada also has their own labeling requirements for specific products. So make sure you check out the labeling requirements for whatever product you're shipping up here. Just touching upon shipping, Canada is a really large country. We're actually the second largest country by geography in the world, but our population is very, very small, and about 80% of it lives within 200 kilometers of the US border. So keeping that in mind, when you're shipping stuff into Canada, it can get expensive because the population, were quite spread out. So it can be expensive and it can be time consuming. So make sure that you're aware of what it's going to cost you to ship your products into Canada. And if you're selling into Canada, you should be aware that both import regulations and sales certifications may be required. This means that each product must meet import regulations before entering Canada, and some may also require product certifications before the item is sold in Canada. So a good rule of thumb is that products that need a specific certification in the United States are probably also going to require a Canadian certification from the corresponding Canadian authority. Think like you're buying a lamp and it has a UL certification in Canada, it's probably going to need a CUL certification. A UL certification in the US, it's going to need a CUL certification in Canada. But you need to be really, really careful, because in some cases with health food supplements, they are not regulated in the United States, but they are in Canada. So you would need to get your certification on those products before they are sold here. One of the other considerations for you before you start exporting to Canada is your tax requirements. We are limited on time today, so all I want to say on this is that taxes are complicated in Canada, and we recommend you speak with an accounting firm that understands Canada's tax requirements for non-residents to determine what your requirements are. And if anybody needs a list, I can provide that. Finally, the Canadian anti-spam legislation, it outlines how you can connect electronically with your Canadian clients. And it's going to greatly affect your marketing strategies in Canada. Basically speaking, you need to get express permission from your potential client before you can send them a message electronically. You also need an obvious unsubscribe mechanism in any electronic message. So failing to follow this law has steep fines that are applicable to US companies. So these are just a few things that I need you to think about before you start doing business here. I know I skipped through them pretty quickly and left out a few, so if you want to follow up after this call, I'd be happy to do so. And if we can flip to the last slide, please, Susanna. So as mentioned earlier, Canadians are used to purchasing from US vendors online. However, there are some crucial aspects to take into account when you're building a website to attract and retain Canadian customers. First of all, localize your website. Use a Canadian domain name. And they've mentioned this a couple times already. The most popular domain extension in Canada is .ca, which stands for Canada. Canadians can quickly recognize websites with this form of domain name as being from Canada. You may also want to write content for Canadian audiences. So this includes the use of Canadian terminology and spelling. So Canadians, deriving from the Brits, spell like the British. So instead of using color, C-O-L-O-R, we use color, C-O-L-O-U-R. And the word center is spelled C-E-N-T-R-E instead of C-E-N-T-E-R. So subtle differences, but it makes a big difference to Canadians. And then Canadians also use the metric system instead of the imperial system. So putting weights and measures in ounces versus pounds and kilometers versus miles is going to be important. And localizing also means adjusting your website currency to Canadian dollars and offering Canadian shipping options where possible. Finally, you should consider providing bilingual content as well. And I'm always going to come back to that one because that language is also important when you're working up here. There are pockets of French speakers right across the country, but if Quebec is your target market, having a French option website is going to be crucial. So with that, I hope I didn't go through it too quickly. I would like to pass on the presentation to my wonderful colleague, Adriana in Mexico.
Actually, first back to me, if that's okay, Tracy. I just wanted to give you a quick example, just sort of give you an example of what a website looks like. You know, when Tracy was talking about a .ca and having that English and French, being digitally compliant, CASL, and then having an online marketing. So all of that translates into having really best practice, high functioning, great websites. And to get back to the importance of getting your terminology right, it's not just that your prospective buyer recognizes that the Canadian word is correct and then feels that you're investing in Canada and making that. It's also important because, you know, if you want to be found, or if you're doing Google ads, you better make sure that your keywords are correct. Otherwise, you're going to pay Google for nothing. So there's lots of words. I mean, Tracy gave the example of color, color with a U, color without a U, center with an R-E or an E-R. You know, here's an example of runner and sneakers. If you're in the athletic business, if you make, you know, running shoes or jogging equipment, you have to make sure that you've got the right keyword. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on most of your audiences. So same search engine, Google, different keywords, different ad campaigns. And again, that sort of, you know, for the e-commerce side, your website with online marketing is absolutely your best sales rep, especially if you have it in English and in French. Clear navigation across all the products, clearly displaying your USPs, your unique selling points, and an absolutely clear checkout process with good and transparent returns policies. And just before I hand over to Adriana, I want to ask you all, let's see if you're still out there. I'm going to ask you all if you are already doing business in Mexico. Are you already doing business in Canada? If so, you know, do you have in-market partners? You doing it online? Are you still thinking about it? Are you doing both online and with an in-market partner? And just give us a feel of that. Oh, thank you all very much for being so fast on the clicker buttons and for responding. So the vast majority of you have responded already. Just to give you some feedback, actually the biggest slice of you are still thinking about it. So we're delighted that you're here on our webinar today to learn more about it. But many of you are already particularly in Canada, more than Mexico. So a lot of, I'm going to close that poll now and turn over to Adriana to talk about the Mexican market, and then Manny to talk about customs. So Adriana.
Thank you so much. So I understand that a lot of you are already working with Canada, but not in Mexico. So I'm gonna start with giving you some points about why you should consider Mexico as an option. So if we could move to the next one. But basically, we are a big, very diversified market, and that per se represents opportunities for U.S. companies. We are actually right now the most important commercial partner of the U.S. We've surpassed Canada apparently, and despite of everything that's going on right now in the world, Mexico has had a stable, perhaps low, but stable economic growth since the 90s. Actually, our currency is really strong right now. The media even calls it the super peso because we've had a huge appreciation, even compared to other, usually strong like the euro and the dollar. Just to give you an idea of like how big the relationship is, out of the 50 states in the U.S., there's 32 for which Mexico is either first or second most important export destination. And so our economies are really, really tied. I also wanted to give you an idea of what's going on with Mexico right now in terms of the business landscape. We do face a lot of Chinese competition in almost every vertical. We are seeing a lot of government tenders that are written to favor Chinese companies, so it's important to keep that in mind, and that's why one of our strongest supports for U.S. companies is advocacy, as Tracy mentioned. We are also seeing an increase in government control in mainly every vertical or every sector, and militarization. So the current government has awarded basically every major project to the armed forces. So, the refinery, the airport, even customs are now run by the militaries. But we also see a lot of opportunities in the market, especially, nearshoring opportunities. The International Monetary Fund has actually increased the economic growth expectation of the country because of this investment that we are already seeing. And this means that there's going to be a lot of new companies that are going to be established in Mexico that are going to require services and goods. And we hope that a lot of that comes from U.S. exporters. So if we go to the next slide, and now diving into e-commerce opportunities in the country, we see that as Mexico advances on its connectivity objectives, we can see important growth in the use of buyers of e-commerce in the country. Actually, we are the top 10 in terms of countries with the highest growth. We had a 23% growth last year compared to a 7.4% average worldwide. We currently have around 63.3 million users, but that's expected to grow to achieve 88 million by 2027. And experts predict that the value of Mexico's e-commerce market will reach almost 71 billion USD by 2027. I also want to talk about some important trends that we're seeing in the next slide. I think John, mentioned something about it, but mobile and social e-commerce, especially conversational marketing, is important in Mexico. We are Latins, we do like to chat, and we engage much more in social media than any other, cultures do. So to do business in Mexico, it is really crucial, very important to develop and maintain close relationships and conversations with your clients, especially when you are developing the relationship. We prefer regular and more direct communications, and platforms such as WhatsApp represents, important opportunities. So when thinking about Mexicanizing, tropicalizing your website, make sure that you include WhatsApp as a mean of communication. There's also, we are seeing a lot of sales happening in Facebook and Instagram, which are actually the main platforms that we use. But it's also closely followed by the Chinese app TikTok. So also something important to keep in mind when, having these conversations with us. We are highly influenced by social media when making purchasing decisions. The Mexican Online Sales Association actually put up a report recently and shows that almost 45% of the e-commerce buyers have bought via Facebook Lives or Instagram. So it's a huge percentage. We are also leaning towards models that favor or that are more environmentally friendly. So a huge percentage of the e-commerce buyers, 60%, have expressed preference for buying from companies that use more eco-friendly packages, for example, or that have more eco-friendly models. And this is something important, for example, if you are exporting cosmetics or personal care items. Also, 80% of the Mexican e-commerce buyers have conducted cross-border shopping in the last year, and the main country of origin is the US, closely followed by China. And here we have kind of like a quality versus price decision, because US goods are usually perceived to have better quality, but there's a lot of verticals for which Chinese goods are preferred because they are way cheaper. Also very important to keep in mind alternative means of payments, and I'm going to talk about more in the next slides about the access to digital services and financial services, but we do have very unique ways of paying in the country. So a lot of the times you do the purchase online, but you don't pay online. So we have the option of paying in cash at convenience stores with a QR code that you get once you do the shopping online. And we also have prepaid cards that you get at convenience stores to pay for online services. So like OTT platforms like HBO, Netflix, even like streaming services, Xbox, they all use those types of payment methods in the market because we still have a lot of population that has no access to credit cards. And we're also seeing a lot of virtual reality, especially in the group of age between 18 and 24 years old, for shopping fashion. But when it comes to people that are 40 and above, what they look for most in the website are descriptions, pictures, and reviews. So also very important to keep that in mind when tropicalizing your website. In the next slide, you can see more about the the Mexican digital buyer demographics. This is very important because we saw last year a decrease in the percentage of middle class accessing e-commerce, but an increase in the higher socioeconomic level using e-commerce to obtain goods and services. And we also saw an increase in the age group that's now using e-commerce. The majority of these e-commerce users become from families that have between 3 and 4 members. They do travel a lot, have usually pets, and do sports. So those are categories that are actually growing when it comes to e-commerce, and represent opportunities for US exporters. And in the next slide, we're going to see what we buy from the US and China, mostly as cross borders, especially fashion, beauty and care products, and toys. And this is mainly because we have access to a broader catalog or options that are not available in the Mexican market. But also specifically or most importantly for ICT goods is because of the prices. Even though with the currency exchange, it ends up being cheaper to buy those things in the US than to buy them in Mexico. However, I do want to highlight that it is important to comply with all the norms and regulations that are necessary for the products to come into Mexico. Manny is going to talk about that, but we do see a lot, sadly, of cases in which the UX exporter believes that it's not necessarily to comply with local regulations because it's e-commerce, but it is important, especially for cosmetics. Especially for supplements, those are not regulated in the US, but they are regulated in Mexico. We do have a equivalent to FDA, which is called COFEPRIS. You do require that approval to be able to commercialize those products in the country. And because of the pandemic, we have a huge backlog of processing. So we've seen companies that have been waiting for almost 2 years to obtain that permit in the country. The next slide, please. I'm going to talk about some, the challenges that impact the growth of e-commerce in Mexico. A lot of the companies, especially small and medium companies, still are focused on the local market instead of thinking about the opportunities of accessing other markets, which will represent more opportunities for U.S. companies to provide such services to internationalize these local companies. We do have a very low access to financial services and banking. So the informality rates of the economy grew during the pandemic. And so around 25% of the local economy is informal, which is huge, right? And so when you are not a formal commerce, then you don't have a lot of means to prove how much money you're making. So therefore, you are not a candidate for a regular bank to access financial services or credits or have a credit card. So that's why we see a lot of alternative means of payment in the country, right? Because we still have between 40 and 30% of the population that cannot access financial services. And this depends on the gender. Like women have less access to those services than men. And from the
Adriana, can I just interrupt you a second? I'm sorry. I do want to leave some space for Manny and other things as well. I don't want to rush you as well, but maybe we could actually go to your next slide about the major tips.
Absolutely.
That's okay? There are some questions coming in, so we can circle back later, maybe about cybersecurity or about the other things, but I do want to.
Yes, so these are very important tips. It's only 5% of the Mexican population that speaks Spanish, so it's very important to keep that in mind. So it is important to translate to Spanish and to Mexican Spanish, right? Because the Spanish that we speak is very different from the one that you speak in Spain, for example, or in other Latin American countries. Like I said, also consider different payment methods, and we communicate very differently than the Americans. We have our own distinct preferences when it comes to radio, TV, social media. So also keep that in mind when you are developing your marketing strategy, and have some sensitivity in the sense that never assume that your market strategy that's successful in the US and Canada is going to also be successful in Mexico. So this is where making these types of changes to your website is very important. And I think that was my last. Oh no, well, we also have a tax legislation. It's kind of new. So I'm available if you want to know more about this and what we are seeing with regards of like legislation and taxing. So just to kick it off to Manny, so he has some time to present to.
Okay, thank you. And just just probably before we turn to Manny, I just wanted to ask as well. If any of you out there would like to learn more about websites and e-commerce in Canada and Mexico, you could let us know. We'd be happy to send you some resources or put you in touch. You can always get in touch with Tracy, Adriana, Manny, or myself. But if you wanted to, let us know, and we can send you, as I said, we can send you some blogs or point you in the right direction for things. And again, thank you all so much for being so quick on the button. And there's a lot of follow-up to be done. We're very appreciative of that. I'm going to close this poll, but I'm going to leave a little bit of a challenge to Manny. Manny, how fast? I know that you're an expert on this. How fast can
Okay. Okay, no problem at all. I'm going to give you just the big idea of this. You already sell to Mexico. You already find the client. You already have everything set. You say, fantastic, let's go to Mexico. Well, what is happening in the middle? Because you need to export if you are making a door-to-door delivery or if you have the client in Mexico. Obviously, if you are an e-commerce company, but supposedly it's a door-to-door delivery. And it's no, it's super common that some companies put the products in a courier company and send it to Mexico. And what happened? There's a nightmare. Export to Mexico related to the Mexican custom compliance can be a nightmare. And there's a lot of going back and you don't know what is happening. They are telling me about the customs broker and then how I want to comply with that. I'm just going to give you these two things super easy. In Mexico, only Mexican entities are authorized to import into Mexico. And this is why in the regular export from the United States, the responsibility of the exporter ends at the border. The Mexican company take over from the border. But in your case, if you are exporting from as a door-to-door delivery, you need to think how to solve this situation. And there's several solution scenarios, like contracting a trading company. And one of the key factors here, I'm going to give you one of the, if you want to know the future, this is the thing if you're going to be easy or can be a kind of difficult, like the video games. In this case, if you need to know what is the HS code of your product. And if you don't know what is an HS code, please send me an email. I can give you that information. And you need to know the HS code of your product in order to know all the requirements requested by the Mexican government. With that, you can know in advance if you want to comply with norms, labeling, these Mexican standard things, or can be sensitive. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but in Mexico, it's difficult to import product that falls in no easy identification product, like powder, cream, aerosols, gases, and all these kinds of all these kinds of products. Then you're required to work with a custom broker to classify the products and obtain the permits. But well, this is one of the things. Like I said, the key factor is going to be to obtain the HS code, work with a team like a forwarder, customs broker, and ask Manny. Myself, I have a lot of market intelligence report and the team of the U.S. Commercial Service Mexico anytime. And one of the good things of my case is a secret is for free in my case.
Manny, thank you very much. And I do encourage y'all to reach out to Adriana and Manny and Tracy for the U.S. Commercial Service. It's an amazing resource for American exporters. Quick slide, just echoing what we saw in Canada. Best practice Mexican websites, .com.mx. It's mobile first market. It's Mexican Spanish, as Adriana was saying. Imagery is incredibly important. You need a WhatsApp, and so on. So, and this another very, very quick slide. This is the time spent on social media. The red arrow is Canada. The blue arrow is the USA. The green arrow are all Mexico and Latin America. Just to show you how sociable, how engaged your Mexican and Latin American prospects are. They expect to see you on social media. And a quick slide as well showing the same thing. This is actually a real case study done a little while ago. Same day, same product. Obviously one in Spanish, one in English, one for Canada, one for Mexico. Look at the engagements. 1,000 in Canada, 20,000 in Mexico. Same day. We had people sending us baby photos in Mexico. Bizarre. But just to show you how engaged Mexico is, how important that social media marketing is. I have like 2 minutes left. And we have a ton of questions. A couple of quick examples of localized websites. A localized website has a lot of things in it. It's not about language. It's about all the things we've talked about. It's about all those those things about your local buyer persona that's hosted, that the regulatory requirements are correct. All of those things make it's basically respecting that local prospective buyer. And for e-commerce, there's some very precise things that need to be done and done right. Pricing, tax, payment methods, shipping and order fulfillment that Adriana and Tracy have talked about. All those things need to be absolutely spot on for you. There are basically two strategies for e-commerce: in-house, out-house. And there's lots of different ways to go about them. But whichever strategy you're taking as a company, both strategies need strong, robust, well thought out websites and terrific online marketing. The world is way too competitive anymore to do it without online marketing. A couple of examples. It's a consumer company, a consumer products company. Basically, they invented the grill topper, and they sold in places like Walmart. They just found their brand disappeared. Therefore, they decided to take back and have a strong website, which would allow them to sell directly, and they also sell through third parties. But that allows them to be in charge of their brand, and that is super important. The next one here, oh, sorry, it's gone blank. Here we go. Just a U.S. company that was very, very much similar to Jonathan, Advanced Super Abrasives, very much into B2B, and they decided to go full e-commerce as well. And that's proven very, very strong ROI, as you can see from David's comment there. And again, he used actually he used some step grants to help fund it for the international side, and has a series of websites, including Canada and Mexico. There we go. What's the next one? Oh, sorry, went too far. This slide here I wanted to show you is just basically it's a distributor search side. So it's slide. This is a company that uses its website and its online marketing to drive leads to its distributors. So it is e-commerce enabled, although there's no payment gateway at the end, because it goes to the distributors, which is an interesting concept, and I think it's really worth considering if you're looking at a distributor model for e-commerce enablement. And then the final one is no payment gateway at all. This is a B2B company, and they do order builders, request a quote. So you pick what you want, put it in your cart, and then request a quote. And that's something we're seeing a lot of. I'm sorry, we're over time, but thank you for all staying on. There's more and more questions coming in. Rounding up, latest trends, takeaways, next steps. Takeaway number one, the world is online. Remember those numbers right in the beginning. 8 billion of us on the planet, 5 billion of us spending 7 hours a day on the internet. So you really, as a company, you need to make sure that your online assets are working hard for you. What we've learned today is that the US sits with two amazing neighbors. Canada and Mexico are both very plugged in, sophisticated markets for the internet. They're both different. They're different from the US and they're different from each other. Mexico, very mobile enabled. Canada, more PC perhaps, more desktop, but also high growth in e-commerce and a high adoption rate in e-commerce. The USMCA, one of the major things it did from an online perspective is it allowed the free flow of data, which is and digital guidelines. That is very, very good news for e-commerce. So another takeaway, I guess, really is from what we see in today's world is that your website combined with online marketing is by far your best sales rep. Remember what we talked about, today's modern buyers, they don't want to have a telephone call. Remember what Jonathan was saying, how his leads would come in and then there'd be the personal touch. There's no more knocking on the door, no more cold calling. That's sort of gone. and that respecting that local buyer persona and means investing in those export markets that you choose, whether it's Canada, whether it's Mexico, and really understanding your local buyer persona and tailoring the website and the online marketing that go with it. As I said, we have online global programs. Please let us know if you'd like to get in touch with us to learn more about them. They're specifically designed for SMEs to grow their online digital and online footprint. And you have an amazing resource with regards to U.S. commercial service. These, this global spread for you across the U.S. and throughout the world, helping you into those markets. So get in touch with Tracy, get in touch with Manny, or get in touch with Adriana if you're looking at either Canada or Mexico. There's a ton of stuff on our website as well. And if you go to the resource page of our website is ibt.oml. If you go to the resource section, there's tons of stuff that you can download for free. Thank you for your indulgence. We've overstepped our time. I do realize that, and we've got a lot of questions. I'm just going to summarize a couple of them, and there's just going to direct one to Jonathan. If you're still there, Jonathan. I realize that it's 5 past the hour. Jonathan, basically, one, how do you measure return on investment on your websites, and how much did it cost? How are you maintaining it? These are sort of 3 consistent questions that keep coming back. I've asked several times.
Well, what's great is that you can get STEP grants if your state has STEP grants, so the cost is very minimal for you. How do we measure return on investment is actually how much contacts do we have. In markets, especially in Latin America, just because you have a contact doesn't mean that you have a sale. You have to build that relationship. Okay, so the more contacts you have with the customer, you need to track all of those, and that will eventually turn into sales. Okay, but the easiest way I can tell you that we did the first year that the website and social media content went live was we just looked at our export sales, and we saw an exponential growth. So the return on investment was almost immediate. And I think somebody else said that on one of the other slides. And then, how do we update it? We update it monthly and then quarterly, and we have meetings with IBT Online to go over what are our marketing strategies. Right now, we're working on new video content. As you heard from everybody wants to hear videos. Everybody wants that personal touch. They want it conversational. They don't want it just, here's a picture and here's what I have. That's it. They actually want it, even if it's in English and not in Spanish, have it dubbed over into Spanish, in Mexican Spanish. So, these are the important things that, you need to be looking at. But in all honesty, most of the content that you're probably asking about, how long does it take, you already have. So it's a very simple process to take a lot of that content, give it to somebody like IBT Online, and let them work the magic behind the scenes to make everything look professional.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. We have a lot of other questions, but I am conscious of time and things, so I'm going to call it as a halt. And we will answer and respond to your questions through email directly. A lot of you are asking also for contact details. You can see on your screen actually the email addresses for Manny, Adriana, Tracy, and myself if you need to get a hold of us specifically. As I said, we will answer your questions by email. I think we've had a fantastic webinar. I wanted to thank everybody today, Tracy, Manny, Jonathan, Adriana for being here and for participating in this sort of marathon webinar today. And for your preparation, and most of all, thank you, audience, for taking the time, learning more about Canada, learning more about Mexico, and do reach out if we can be of any help. We're here to help American exporters. Thank you all very, very much. Have a great rest of the day, and thank you. And we'll see you, I hope, soon on another online event or in person. Thank you all. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.